working out outside. They've been lifting some heavy stuff. How's the lat, Kev? How's the lat, mate?
Yeah, it's a lot better actually.
Good. I'm glad.
Thanks for the stretches.
Good. Goody good. Cool. Okay, gang. I'll give it another. Give it. I'll start at one. Some people, I'm sure there might be some other people who might be a minute late. So I'll give it to one pass. Then I'll make a start. Good. 12, yeah. Good. A couple more in.
Evening all.
Good evening. Good evening, Mrs. Dalton. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Good, mate. Good to see you. Lisa, hello, darling. Hello, hello, hello. Steve-O, hello. Blanked me. Got blanked by my own dad. It's not very nice, is it?
Steve, yeah. Hi there.
Cool. Okay then, gang. I'll make a start. So firstly, for those that everyone knows me, so I don't need to introduce myself, but I'm George, coming to you from giving a presentation on behalf of New Leaf Academy, which is among a number of us have started this company and bringing health and wellness and flipping it on its head and presenting it in a different sort of way. So once a month we bring specialists in to sort of talk about specializing in their fields and being experts in their fields. But this month I wanted to bring you something a little bit different, something that I used to do. So one thing I used to do is I used to work in 2 different drug and alcohol rehabs. So I used to give lectures on health and well-being. There I used to take them for walks. I used to give them boot camps as well. And I did a number of different presentations, and this presentation was my favorite, and it had the biggest impact. And it opened a lot of doors for people because it really focuses the attention on the root of problems, and it sort of strips a lot of things back to sort of base level, and gives you an insight into why we do the things we do, sometimes in good or bad. Like I always say, that's like, in order to fix a problem, sometimes you have to identify what the problem is, and this gives you a little bit of an insight into that. So as well, anytime. So what we're going to do is we're going to I'm just going to give a little intro. Then I'm going to introduce you to an actual expert. This is really his philosophy and his sort of ethos that he talks through. His name's Dr. Robert Lustig. He's a medical doctor from America. He specializes in food and brain psychology. And so I listened to this years ago, and again, it's one of those light bulb moments that there's a before you know this information, and then there's an after. So we'll watch a video for the first 20 minutes, and then I'll give a slide presentation pretty much on the presentation that he spoke about, and then I want to open that up to us as well. Any time anyone's got a question, you can either speak up or you can raise your hands in the whatever the raise the hand button, and I can answer to the best of my ability. Just want to make it clear as well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an expert in this field, so I won't try and if you ask me a question, I won't BS the answer if I don't know, and I think that's an important point. But this is the sort of information that I think, to bring it to the forefront and to bring it to people's minds is really powerful. Okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of a brief overview. So good evening, everyone. So today we're diving into the timeless debate, pleasure versus happiness. Now at first glance you might think they're one and the same. Something feels good, it must be happy. But not so fast. Pleasure is that voice in your head saying, this feels amazing, I need more of it now. And that is dopamine. So dopamine is your brain a brain neurochemical. Okay, that's that pleasure neurochemical. We'll keep going back to that. So the brain's party drug, whereas happiness, on the other hand, is serotonin. You know, that whispering feeling, this feels right. I don't need any more. I'm feeling content, that feeling of contentment. Now, here's the real kicker. There's a little, and there's a little addict in all of us, constantly chasing that next high, whether it's that extra cookie, another episode of Netflix, or let's face it, just one more scroll on our phone in bed. Our brain loves a good hit of dopamine, but happiness, that's trickier. It's contentment, knowing you don't need more because you've already got enough. So today we're going to explore why pleasure feels like a sprint and happiness feels more like a marathon, and how the two different runners impact our lives. Okay, so sharing. Okay, cool. Can everybody just check? Can everybody see that? Just give me a thumbs up. Everybody see that? Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yep. So pleasure versus happiness. Brilliant. Okay. So again, covered a little bit of this, but we'll just to say this again. So in short, pleasure is the feeling that this feels good, I want more, and happiness is the feeling that I don't need anymore. This is our most eye-opening presentation and gives our clients an insight into why they feel the way they do. This delves into dopamine and serotonin balance of the body and focuses on the fact that in order to fix the problem, you have to identify what the problem is. Yep, we've already been over that. Sorry. Okay, so this is just a little brief overview on Dr. Robert Lustig. So he's an absolute pro in his field. He's written a number of books, including one of them which I've listened to an audio book on, which is Metabolical, the law and the lies of processed food, nutrition, and modern medicine. So he's a real focuses on food, and has got a real passion around it. He works with childhood obesity, as we'll hear. So he's an MD. He specializes in the field of I can't even read that word that's highlighted in green, neuroendocrinology. I did have that. Practices clinical children's hospitals, obesity. He holds a bachelor's degree in science at MIT, a doctorate in medicine. So he's the top of his field. So we're going to watch a little video that he's presented talking about his book Hacking of the American Mind. I will be skipping forward bits of it because otherwise it's too long, and some things aren't relevant. Okay, so we will go to that now. Stop sharing, and I want to Windows. Good. There we go. Okay. I just want I'll play it, and then if you all can, I'll come because I can't see you while I've got you on the screen. If you can all just give me a thumbs up to make sure you can hear it, because that won't be ideal.
Hi, my name is Ashley Mason, and I'm an assistant professor of psychiatry at UCSF, and I'm here with Rob Lustig, who is a neuroendocrinologist here at UCSF as well. And today we're talking about his new book called The Hacking of the American Mind. So, Rob, why don't you start by telling us what the book is about in a way that folks without a medical degree would understand?
Actually, I wrote this book because we've suffered a crisis in our culture. And I believe it comes down to a mistake that we've made between the interpretation of two of our most important and positive emotions, pleasure and happiness. A lot of people equate the two, but I'm here to tell you that they are completely different. A lot of people think they're exactly the same. In fact, on the internet, you can find definitions that actually conflate and confuse the two. So what are the differences between pleasure and happiness? And I believe there are 7. Pleasure is short-lived, happiness is long-lived. Pleasure is visceral, happiness is ethereal. Pleasure is taking, happiness is giving. Pleasure can be achieved with substances, happiness cannot be achieved with substances. Pleasure is experienced alone, happiness is experienced in social groups. The extremes of pleasure all lead to addiction, whether they be substances or behaviors. Yet there's no such thing as being addicted to too much happiness. And finally, number 7, most important, pleasure is dopamine and happiness is serotonin. Now, these are 2 biochemicals. These are 2 neurotransmitters. These are 2 chemicals that the brain makes and uses to communicate between one neuron brain cell and another. Now, why do we care? So what? Well, turns out dopamine excites the next neuron. And neurons, when they're excited too much, too frequently, tend to die. So the neuron has a defense mechanism against that. What it does is it reduces the number of receptors that are available to be stimulated in an attempt to try to mitigate the damage.
When you say to be stimulated, you mean to be excited?
To be excited, that's right. And so we have a name for that process. It's called downregulation. And a lot of different chemicals in the body do that. Now, you get a hit, you get a rush, the receptors go down. Next time, you need a bigger hit to get the same rush because there are fewer receptors to occupy. And you need a bigger hit and a bigger hit and a bigger hit until finally taking a huge hit to get nothing. That's called tolerance. And then when the neurons start to die, that's called addiction. Serotonin, however, is inhibitory. It's not excitatory. It inhibits its receptor to provide contentment, to zen out, if you will. So you can't overdose the serotonin neuron.
And what does it mean to inhibit a receptor?
What it means is it binds, but it doesn't activate the process beyond the receptor. So what it does is it basically slows down those neurons instead of causing them to fire up. And so in doing so, you end up with the process of contentment, that feeling of one with the world, if you will, that thing we call happiness. Now, there's one thing that downregulates serotonin, dopamine. So the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you get.
So following so far, it's quite enlightening when you hear that, as in, like, the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you become chemically. Doesn't matter about stimulus of what those things are. Again, when I present this before, it comes from an addiction standpoint, but as I said, we all have a little addict in us. So we'll have our little things that we overindulge in. And those things, if we keep pressing that button, if we keep overindulging in these pleasure neurotransmitters, these pleasure dopamine, these pleasure transmitters, then it downregulates our serotonin. The dopamine takes up the space of serotonin in our mind, so it's harder to become happy chemically, which is quite profound when you really think about it. Cool. Let's get back to it.
And Las Vegas, Madison Avenue, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and Washington, D.C. have very specifically and in a coordinated fashion confused and conflated the term happiness with the term pleasure so that you can buy happiness, so that they can sell you their junk. It's called the American economy, and it's based on hedonic substances that drive pleasure rather than happiness. And in the process, we have become most decidedly unhappy. And the problem is, you can't fix a problem unless you identify what the problem is. That's the reason for this book.
In the title of the book, you use the word hacking. This sounds pretty dark and conspiratorial. Do you really think that there's been a plot to control our minds?
Well, so let's first of all, define the word hack. So hack has a relatively short history. The very first time the word hack was used, other than in a butchery, was in 1955, when it was used at MIT, the Model Railroad Club, to talk about an unusual solution to a complex problem. And that's what it meant for quite a while. An example: stealing a car is a felony offense. stealing a Boston police car, disassembling it, carrying each piece up 5 floors to the Great Dome of MIT, reassembling it, and putting a mannequin of a Boston police officer with a box of donuts in the front seat. That's a hack. Over the course of the next several decades, the word hack became synonymous with clever approaches to complex computer problems, which we now call white hat hacking, which is very prevalent and common here in Silicon Valley. But in the process, we also now have black hat hacking, as we learned during the 2016 presidential election when the Russians hacked Hillary Clinton's emails.
So then black hat hacking is, can you define that?
So it's a malevolence in an attempt to basically blackmail or to cause the crashing of a computer, to wipe out a hard drive. So clearly not something good. And the question is, how can your brain be hacked? And the answer is, well, it doesn't get hacked with computer code, but it gets hacked with false information. And in fact, we've had false information since the time of the Romans. It's called propaganda. So what's the difference between marketing, which is what companies say they do, and propaganda? And the answer is the truth. That's the difference. When companies express a point of view that furthers their goals, then that point of view references true facts. That's called marketing. When a company expresses a point of view and tries to advance its goals based on misinformation, that's called propaganda. So the difference between marketing and propaganda is the truth. The corporations of America today have engaged in a very specific attempt to market their propaganda in order to get us to do different things than we might otherwise have done. Examples. The easiest one, of course, is food, and the one that I've written about previously. The idea that foods can be healthy goes back a long way. In fact, not eating food is not healthy. It's called starvation. The question is, which foods are the ones that ultimately lead to health? And the answer is not the ones that the food industry has touted. In fact, we have the data that demonstrates that they knew what they were doing. When we went low fat in the 1970s, the Sugar Association knew what it was doing. In fact, there is a now paper trail of the communications between the Sugar Association and 2 Harvard School of Public Health scientists to specifically exonerate sugar and finger saturated fat as the culprit for our cardiovascular disease debacle. Turns out, we now have the data to show that that was completely untrue, that we have actually experienced an increase in obesity, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, lipid problems, cancer, and dementia because of our processed food diet, which we were told was healthy. And they knew back in the 1970s that that was not the case. That's black hat hacking. Our minds have been hacked to believe certain things that are not true.
So I use the example here. Obviously, food's a big one. I've used the example here, you know, with the food pyramid, advertising in England, you know, and again, England is one of those things where we are behind America in so many ways, and we are a little bit as well with food, as in that I think there is actually becoming a shift now. But I think there wasn't for a long time. Whereas this black hat hacking, where we just believe what we are told, and especially around food. And this is one of my biggest passions and one of my real reasons with New Leaf and about nutrition and getting that information out there is that I was having this conversation today, like it's abnormal. People think you're weird, you're abnormal when you really focus about what you eat and you train and you fast and you're focused on and you have a higher power and a higher purpose around these sort of things. But I think just blindly following government guidelines or blindly just eating what is advertised is more abnormal than anything else.
And it's been a very specific corporate plot. Now, I won't go so far as to say it was a conspiracy, because we do not have data that says that different corporations colluded with each other to specifically defraud the American public and to inflict malice upon the American public. But we do have the data to show that individual companies engaged in their own plots to do so. Another example, of course, was tobacco. Tobacco made it very clear for many years that there was no relation between nicotine and addiction, except that they had the data that said otherwise. And they lied to Congress very specifically. So tobacco, alcohol, food, guns, energy, these are all hedonic substances and or behaviors, and they have costs. And we're paying those costs now. We're paying it in terms of our addiction crisis. We're paying it in terms of our opioid, our depression crisis. We're paying it in terms of lives lost, and we're paying it in terms of our healthcare debacle. And you can't reverse it till you understand it. You can't pull yourself out of the ditch until you figure out how you drove into it.
So Rob, in your book, you talk a lot about the difference between pleasure and happiness. In just a few sentences, can you tell us what is the major distinction between the two?
So from a social standpoint, pleasure is the feeling that this feels good, I want more. Happiness or contentment is the feeling of this feels good, I don't want or need anymore. They're not the same. In fact, pleasure begets more pleasure. This is what the casinos are counting on. On the other hand, I don't want or need anymore says, what if there was something to purchase, I don't need to purchase it. In fact, all of the things that say this feels good, I don't want or need anymore are things that you can't buy. They're not for sale. They are, however, accessible to every single human being on the planet. They're all the things your mother told you, but you forgot. I call them the 4 C's.
We'll come to that.
I love them.
A lot of the substances that you're talking about are everywhere. They're ubiquitous.
Indeed.
How do we become aware of our addictions to them?
Well, it can be hard. I can tell you, I know what I'm addicted to. Caffeine. My wife and I do codependence with the Krupps. The fact is that a lot of people don't necessarily understand that they are addicted. They know they need something. When want becomes need, that's usually a sign of addiction. And I will tell you, I need my 2 cups of coffee in the morning just to function. And I'm not proud of it. On the other hand, if you take my Starbucks away from me, I will kill you. A lot of people say they have a sweet tooth. That's usually a sign of sugar addiction, if they say that. If they find themselves not being able to concentrate on their job or on their family because this craving is calling to them and it's interfering with their daily life in some fashion or in their work, that's usually a sign of addiction. And that can happen from shopping, from porn, from video games and cell phones. That, of course, has been the most recent addition to this. If you find yourself checking your cell phone every 2 minutes, waiting for a new email, that's usually a sign of cell phone addiction. And it works the same way in terms of the dopamine. There's a paradigm that companies use to get us addicted. It was outlined in a book by Nir Eyal called Hooked. It starts with a trigger, an itch, if you will. Okay, and then that itch has to be scratched, and presumably the scratch is something that's socially acceptable, like, for instance, checking a cell phone. And then variable reward. Now, if the reward's the same every time, it won't become a habit. It won't become an addiction. But if it's different each time, then there is an impetus and a pressure to keep doing it and keep checking it. And ultimately, it becomes part of your daily life. That is what cell phones have done over the last 10 years. They've basically occupied this primary position within our culture to the point where we almost now can't even concentrate on our jobs. And the last part of the cycle is investment. That is, you have to be willing to plunk down another $299 for the next iPhone. Independence.
One of the substances that you've written and talked about the most has been food, processed food. And of course, how this contributes to metabolic disease. It seems like our healthcare system is set up, albeit not the best, to treat metabolic problems more than to prevent them. Is it hopeless? Where do you see this going?
Well, right now, we have more money going out for chronic metabolic disease than for everything else. In fact, 75% of our healthcare expenditures are for the diseases that constitute metabolic syndrome. That is type 2 diabetes, hypertension, lipid problems, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and dementia. You add that up, that's 75%.
England, I looked out the other day, is 68%. 68% are all on those things he just mentioned.
Of expenditures. Here's the math. The food industry grosses $1.46 trillion a year, of which $657 billion is gross profit. They're making a huge profit. However, healthcare expenditures are $3.2 trillion, of which 75% is chronic metabolic disease, of which 75% of that could be prevented if we could fix the food problem. Bottom line, you can't have healthcare reform unless you have health reform. And you can't have health reform unless you have diet reform. Now, Obamacare promised that we...
Can you tell us a little bit about what led you to write this book in the first place?
So I've known about the dopamine serotonin connection for 30 years. I knew about this when I was a postdoctoral fellow at Rockefeller University, cutting up rat brains and, studying how hormones affected neurons. But it wasn't until 2014 when I was giving psychiatry grand rounds at a major medical school here in the United States. And I talked to the outpatient coordinator of their recovery program, who herself was a reformed heroin addict. And she told me something that was so jarring. What she said to me was, she said, when I was shooting up, I was happy. What my new life has brought me is pleasure. And I thought to myself, wait a second, this is exactly opposite. When she was shooting up, that's what brought her pleasure because it was heroin. And her new life has provided her with a more steady, long-term feeling of contentment. So I thought to myself, how often does this happen? And is this potentially at the bottom of why we have an opioid and an addiction crisis? And I've talked with many psychiatrists who have had the same experiences told to them by their patients. About a week and a half after I got back from that trip, I was talking to my sister-in-law, and she used to work the help desk at Pillsbury before they were taken over by General Mills. Like what people would call in, why they have icicles and they're popping fresh dough, and, stuff, why the carton would, the microwave carton would melt, in the microwave, things like that. And she stayed friends with the people she worked with, and they had a gourmet club every year. And they would all bring things. And one of the members of her gourmet club said to my sister-in-law, you always stay so nice and thin. How do you do it? And this woman had just undergone bariatric surgery for obesity. And my sister-in-law said, well, really, I just only eat when I'm hungry. And the woman said to her, eating for hunger? Eating is for happiness. And I thought to myself, aha, I take care of obese kids for a living. And I've heard that story, but it was never so jarring as when I heard this, this discussion. And I put the two together and I said, we don't know the difference. And indeed, there is an entire paper trail of not knowing the difference. And you can see it on television, on YouTube, virtually every day. Coca-Cola's Open Happiness campaign, Happy Hour. Okay. Cialis, will you be ready? Add a little stress thrown in. Bottom line, we have mistaken the experience of pleasure for the experience of happiness. And so we continue to drive our interest in pleasure at the expense of our happiness. And you can't undo the paradigm unless you understand it. And the 4 C's are the way to fix the problem.
Thank you for talking with us today about your new book.
Brilliant. Okay, so the 4 C's is something we will get onto in a moment. So just going to watch one other little video. This one's only 3 minutes. It just gives us again another really good little metaphor. This is Anna. I've heard her name many times and I always mispronounce it. Lembicki. That's probably not right. She's an MD. Professor of psychiatry at Stanford University's School of Medicine. And she's written this book, Dopamine Nation, which is a really good book. She's been on many podcasts. I've listened to her a number of times. Most important, she tells her is how to find balance between, a deficit balance between the two. And this is this gives a really good little analogy on the dopamine serotonin balance. So 1 second, share Windows. Yeah, good. This one's literally 2 minutes.
Of smoke, then that plume looks like a dragon's tail. So it's got a couple of different meanings. But yes, I mean, what you're saying is exactly right. And the way that I describe this to patients and describe it to medical students is imagine that in your brain there's a balance, kind of like a teeter-totter in a kid's playground. And one of the most interesting findings in neuroscience in the past 75 years is that pleasure and pain are co-located, which means the same parts of our brain that process pleasure also process pain, and they work like opposite sides of a balance. So when we do something that's rewarding or reinforcing or pleasurable, our balance tips slightly to the side of pleasure. We get a little release of dopamine, the pleasure neurotransmitter in that part of our brain, our reward pathway, and we feel good. But the thing about that balance is that it wants to remain level, and the brain will work very hard to restore a level balance, or what's called homeostasis. And it does that by tipping the brain an equal and opposite amount to the side of pain. So again, the way the balance restores homeostasis is to tip to the opposite side. That's the come down after using, that moment of wanting to do it again, the hangover. If we wait long enough, that feeling passes and balance is restored. But if we don't wait and we continue to use our drug again and again, we end up with a balance that's essentially weighted to the side of pain. And I imagine that like these little neuroadaptation gremlins hopping on the pain side of the balance. Not very scientific, I know. But the point is that with repeated use, we get enough gremlins on the pain side of the balance to fill this whole room. And then we're essentially working from a dopamine deficit state. We've downregulated our own dopamine. We've downregulated our own dopamine transmission. And those gremlins like it on the balance. So they don't get off after the hangover is over or the acute withdrawal. They can persist there for weeks to months to years, which is why people with addiction, even when their lives have become so much better, will relapse because they're not walking around with a level, pleasure pain balance, they're walking around with the balance tipped to the side of pain. They're experiencing the universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance or behavior: anxiety, irritability, insomnia, dysphoria, and intrusive thoughts of wanting to use their drug again. Now, with enough time elapsed, and again, with people with severe addiction, it can take months to years, those neuroadaptation gremlins will hop off. We will regenerate our own dopamine and our own dopamine receptors, and our level balance or homeostasis will be restored.
Is it scientific to call them gremlins?
Super scientific.
Watch the entire episode for
Okay.
free only on Spotify.
Stop sharing. Good. Okay. So again, it's a lot of sorry. A lot of information to digest there. So again, I'm sure some of you might be thinking as well, like, you know, I haven't got an addiction. I'm not an addict. How does this relate to me? But as I said before, I believe all of us have got a little bit of addict in us, one way or another, whatever it might be. Okay, and I say this, like food is fuel, but also like food is an addiction like anything else. And again, like we could, if we were just eating for happiness, we'd be eating boring, nutritious food that fills our quota, that is nutritiously dense and fills us through. But then we want to jazz it. We want to make it pleasurable. We want to include more things that stimulate that dopamine rather than just the serotonin of happiness and contentment. And then our phones, all of us are on our phones. Might be gambling, lots and lots of different things that we can equate to it. Okay, so now I'm going to run through the presentation. Good, we're back. Okay, so here are the 7 differences, okay, that Dr. Robert Lustig spoke about. Okay, so, and then we're going to go through them. So also as well, gang, I will put some questions out there. They're nice, easy ones. So if anybody wants to chime in that they're for a thought, please do so. But don't have to, no pressure. So pleasure is short-lived, whereas happiness is long-lived. Pleasure is visceral, where happiness is ethereal. We'll talk about the meaning of those words in a bit. Pleasure is taking, whereas happiness is giving. Pleasure can be achieved with substances, whereas happiness cannot be achieved with substances, external substances. Pleasure is experienced alone, whereas happiness is experienced in social groups. All extremes of pleasure can lead to addiction, but there is no such thing as too much happiness. And then lastly, as we spoke about, most importantly, pleasure is dopamine, and happiness is serotonin. Okay, so move that out of the way. Okay, so we define a short-term pleasure to be any form of pleasure that experienced in a short period of time. I'll put it out to you. Can anybody shout out anything that they believe is a short-term pleasure? Short-term pleasure, anybody? Want to shout it out?
Sugar.
Sugar. There you go. There's one. Anybody else? Don't think of one. Alcohol, absolutely. Short term, isn't it? It's a short term effect that lasts. So basically, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They're some short term pleasures, aren't they? They don't last. They're fantastic at the time, but they don't last. So here's some examples here. Okay, so watching your favorite TV show, soap, Netflix, eating delicious bad food, having sex, taking drugs, smoking and vapes, laughing, humor, drinking alcohol, surprises, current events, shopping, and gambling. I always want to make it clear here on this one that pleasure gets a bad rap. Seemed to in this presentation, and we think, oh God, surprises. What's so bad with surprises? This is the thing with pleasure. It's all in like anything, like health. It's the 80-20. It's the 80%, 20%. Everything in moderation. We have to experience the moderation of pleasure so we enjoy it. Because if it was the other way around and all of these things were the 80%, like if every day was a surprise, then it wouldn't have the same effect. If we were drinking every day, then we would build up a tolerance to it. If we were constantly watching TV, we would get bored. All these things that are pleasure seeking hedonic substances have an expiration date, and we have to earn them, and we have to work up to them. Just the way as said, we spoke today, Dad, didn't we? Like, as in, if you're gonna have a good weekend and you want to enjoy and you want to go out, you want to have a couple of drinks, you want to eat, you got to earn it. You got to earn it, and then you got to pay for it on Monday. All these things, and that's the same. It's the same example as what's going on in the brain, as in what you're doing in your own life, your own way. You need to think deeper and more personal than it is just about, like, I want to lose weight, or I want to, and what you're going through and what you're doing. This is happening in our brain, and for our longevity and for a good brain neurochemistry, we have to be thinking about these things and understanding why we do the things we do, which is the whole reason for this presentation. So we define long-term happiness for any form of pleasure that is experienced continuously throughout a person's life. So again, shout out to the masses. Give me some examples of some long-term pleasures or happiness. Have we got any? Ooh.
Happiness is getting down to the weight and staying there.
Yep. A state of health. Yep, definitely.
Long-term relationship.
Long-term relationship, absolutely. Family. There. Yes, Shano. Fantastic. Exactly. Okay. So here's one. Here we go. So we've got academic success, professional achievement, feeling proud of overcoming a difficult physical challenge like finishing a marathon or lifting a record weight, reaching a personal milestone, like delivering an important product, or reaching your goal weight or a state of health. Go and exercise. Again, if you can mute again someone, because I can hear some echo, please. Taking joy at success in your children, having meaning or purpose, Gov. Having meaning or purpose, having that higher elevated purpose or power, that drives us through on days that we feel worthless, or we're not feeling up to it.
Sorry,
Having that
George.
deeper emotional feeling.
Chris, can you mute your microphone, please? Chris.
Thank you, Shano. That job you've always wanted or liked doing. Daily habits and discipline. Again, motivation comes and goes, but discipline lasts forever. And it's that fulfillment of discipline, that consistency that gives us happiness at the end. Like, at that moment, like, do you want to wake up early and go for that workout? And no one want. The bed is so comfy. None of us want to get up early and work out. But it's that future feeling of happiness that we know we're going to have after we've done it, that's going to have that feeling of contentment, rather than that feeling of pleasure right now. This bed's really comfy, I'm just going to enjoy it. But then that doesn't last, and then we feel, and then we're on our own back and feel guilty that what we've got, or that we've let ourselves down in that way. And then obviously love, as you said to be on, it takes a lot of commitment, and takes a lot of I used to have a really, really good phrase for this. It's tough, isn't it? It's tough. It's tough forming a long-lasting relationship. It takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of give and take. And so that's that long live. That's that, that's that passion throughout. That's having that purpose, as we spoke about. Okay, now on to visceral. Okay, so a visceral feeling is instinctive. There might not be a rational explanation, but you feel you know what's best. Visceral works on a non-intentional level, and is often regarded almost as not connected to emotions. So, as it says here, a visceral reaction is instinctive, gut-bodied response. So you feel it in the gut. You think you know what's best. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean a negative, because obviously we really, really go off our guts. And our guts form our opinions. But sometimes, as I say, it's important not to become married to our opinions. Opinions change. So things can change. And we evolve, don't we? And we develop. We don't just stay stubborn in what we think. We want to be radiators, not drains. Okay, raw and uncontrollable. These visceral reactions are something that all people experience. Some examples would be shivering, adrenaline rushes, that heart rate and breathing speeding up or slowing down, the stomach tightening, a flash of nausea, heat or sweating. Again, those, it's the short-lived emotions that we have. Again, like pleasure, these are all short-lived. Okay, and sometimes it's important. It's important to regather instead of react. So a visceral might be that something happens and bam, you react to the stimulus. Whereas we want to regather. We want to have ethereal feelings more often than the visceral. But obviously, visceral is important because a lot of them are survival mechanisms and feelings. So happiness, ethereal. A definition of ethereal is something is someone or something that is light, airy, or content. Someone that is ethereal might be described as having an aura or a presence about them. And now we all have met these sorts of people. The way we like to put it, more or less, an elevated or alternate spiritual plane where we can glimpse some higher truth or higher purpose. We can find insight into our own existence, environments, and the people that surround us every day if we just take the time to challenge ourselves and look at the world in a different way. So again, this is similar to this conversation we're having now. We're not just keeping our head down and going with the flow. We want to educate ourselves. We want to look up. And this includes our professional landscapes. Think of it like when you work in the mud all day, it's hard to remember being clean. Okay. And then knowledge is truth. Truth is clarity, and clarity is focus. That's why, again, I say it to anyone who's been on plan with me and my clients. I'm not there to, I'm there to motivate you, but mostly I'm there to inspire you. I want to inspire you. And how do I inspire you? I want you to find inspiration in yourself and find strength in yourself. And how do you do that? By giving you all the tools, and giving you all the tools like this tool here today is giving you that inner knowledge about the stuff that's going on in your brain, so you can do it for yourself. So you can make your own, how would I say that? Put in your own lines, draw your own roadmaps, to not just relying on others to do it for you. And that knowledge is truth, truth is clarity, and clarity is focus aspect. Easy slide, this one. Pleasure can be achieved with substances. Happiness cannot be achieved with substances. That doesn't mean all pleasure is achieved with substances, but happiness is not experienced outside the body. Happiness is from within. We're not relying on an external stimulus to change the way we're feeling. Whereas pleasure is taken. So pleasure is, payday, as in you're thinking already about what we're gonna invest that money into, spending money, receiving gifts, time, taking people's time. That's a big one in addiction, as in it's the unknowing thought, the unknowingness of taking people's time, then self-seeking action, and then receiving affirmation. So that's all pleasure taking. Whereas happiness is giving. Again, that feeling. What do we always say, Dad? Like, as in like it's good to do selfish acts, as in giving. Like we feel that happiness, and I do call it happiness, as in when you give that but you don't do it for affirmation, as a giving affirmation, inspiring others. You're not doing it for the affirmation, you're doing it for yourself. Yes, you could consider that a selfish act, even though it says selfless acts there, but that's that higher elevated spiritual plane, as we were talking about. So time, love, giving gifts, charity, volunteering, gratitude, big one of happiness. Healthy life choices, spirituality, balance, no regrets, and hearing laughter. Pleasure is experienced alone, whereas happiness is experienced in social groups. So again, the same ones for both of these, but you're going to feel more of your serotonin biomechanical makeup in social groups, because we are social animals, and we'll get onto that later on. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy the pleasure moments alone, but you're going to get more of the serotonin experience in social groups. And another easy one: extremes of pleasure can lead to addiction. There is no such thing as too much happiness. As we said, as it was said there, there's only one thing that down regulates your serotonin, and that is dopamine. So the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you become. So it's a right slogan to remember. Cool. Okay. getting on to the last couple of slides now. So we've spoken a lot about dopamine and serotonin. So we're going over, already walked ground, but this is important for us to nail in what it is about. So dopamine is the reward neurotransmitter that tells our brain, this feels good, I want more. Too much dopamine leads to addiction. Whereas serotonin is the contentment neurotransmitter that tells our brain, this feels good, I have enough, and I don't want any more. Too little serotonin leads to depression. Ideally, both should be at an optimum supply, but dopamine drives down serotonin, and chronic stress obviously drives down both. And again, that another slogan that we really take away from tonight: the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you get. And the good news is you can fight back. Okay, the 4 C's. Some more C's, Gov. I don't know, how dare he steal your C's. Okay, so the 4 C's of happiness. You heard him talking about this. So this is how we find happiness. Again, most of these things, as he said about, you cannot buy. These are things that happen all around in the community, can happen at home, can happen in our social groups, whatever it might be. And so they're documented in neuroscience, the effects of the 3 brain pathways. Okay, and then the 4 C's of happiness require active participation. They can't be purchased or found on an app. You are the app, which again I like. It's a nice little, even though we've got an app from New Leaf, we have to, you have to invest in yourself. Can't just do it. You can't rely on the app to do it for you. You have to put the work in. So firstly, connect. So anything short of face-to-face, eye-to-eye, in real life interaction is not connection. So again, we experience a lot of depression and sadness and addiction during COVID, obviously, when we weren't connecting. And this is something as well that, that is so underrated. And this relates to my, actually, no, I'll say my point in a bit, but this is again, like, contributing factors of this, I heard someone say this recently, like in religion, actually, and that's why religion has been such a big part of the connection of our species for so long, because necessarily, with religion, it isn't necessarily the faith that is the most important. Obviously it is very important, but it's the connection, it's the community, which is the most important aspect of religion. You all turn up and you have shared values, shared belief, and you all turn up together in a place, and you worship, a single, the single entity that you believe in. And that itself is just as powerful as the faith itself, which is a different way of looking at it, which I like. It shows you the power of humanity and what we can do. So why is literal face-to-face time important? It's the mirror neurons. Okay, you adopt or mirror the emotions of the person. This generates the phenomenon we call empathy, which is necessary for producing serotonin. So let's talk about, like, Reginald, talk about psychopaths, as in if you have psychopathic tendencies, this is a hormone. You don't produce empathy. So let's hope we don't have any in the group tonight. I'm sure we don't. Connectivity is not connection. Email is not connection. Facebook is not connection. We need to, have that connection. And that comes on to contribute. So contributing to something outside of yourself, which could be self-worth, altruism, volunteerism, or philanthropy. Doing things not for that validation. Doing things, again, we call it. This is a debate that me and Dad have, as in, like, do you hold that? You hold the door open for a lady. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, but also it feels good. It feels good. Is that pleasure? Is that happiness? This is the debate there. But again, it's that important thing for us to do, that inner feeling, and not doing it purely for someone to say, well done. Yes, the well done's nice, but it's important to not chase it for those reasons. So making money is not contributing. Spending money is not contributing, but charity is, and giving back. Okay, cope. This is all about self-care. So a number of things in here that obviously are very, very important for us. So sleep, again, sleep is so important. For anyone who doesn't know this, or anyone hasn't done the research on this, I put it in a phrase: if you can only fit in your day an hour of extra sleep or an hour of exercise, you take sleep. That's how important sleep is for our rest and recovery. So as it says, sleep deprivation increases cortisol and causes depression, whereas exercise tamps down your cortisol. Okay, which makes us more zen, which calms us out, which, you know, and boosts our endorphins. Screens kill. This is a good little statistic that he said in the presentation, but I skipped it forward. Kids who charge their cell phone in the room get 28 minutes less sleep per night. Those who don't. Add that up over a year, add that up over a lifetime. That is massive, absolutely massive. So it's a little hack that I definitely will be doing. When the boy eventually gets his phone, as in it will not be in his room at night time. And then avoiding multitasking, nemesis of all mindfulness. It's one thing that you have on me, mum. You can you have this ability. I do not. Only 2.5% of people can actually multitask. For everyone else, it's smoke and mirrors. You know, increasing their stress and cortisol and risking depression. You know, too many things at once. You know, focusing on one thing, getting that done and following it through to the end, and then moving on. Again, obviously we all have lives, we all have work, you know, but we're you know, companies look for people who can multitask, obviously, but it's not a good contributor to our mental health and depression. Cool. Okay, guys, there was one more, but I took it out because I didn't want to take up any more time. Oh, cool, just shy of an hour. Okay. Brilliant, guys. Thank you very, very much for listening. I really, really appreciate your time. And I hope you hold on, bear with me. Get your screen back. I hope you got a little something out of this, and I hope it wasn't too long-winded. But yeah, like it's that tagline of the pleasure. Pleasure is the feeling that this feels good, I want more. Happiness is the feeling of this feels good, I don't want or need anymore. And the more pleasure we seek, the more unhappy we become. They're the two taglines that if you remember nothing else, and then you can implement that into so many different avenues in your life, whether it be your social life, your work life, your family life, your exercise life, your health, whatever it might be. So I really hope I've given you some little tools that you can develop and use in your lives. Cool, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Do we have any questions or any thoughts or anything? Thank you,
George. I think I thought it was quite interesting, really. The play on the, you know, it's given me some food for thought with happiness. And you know, I can only say that I've met one person in the whole of my life that is completely satisfied with everything in their life. Just one. And I've met lots of people that have lots of happiness in their lives, but not many people that are completely satisfied, because we're all striving for more and more and more. And I get the point on the addictions, and you know, it is a struggle for lots of people. And it's somebody. I mean, I can't understand anybody who has a gambling addiction. It just doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm not addicted to gambling. I don't see that. I just couldn't possibly be addicted to it. But everybody has struggles, and you know, seeking out the happiness is something we should all do, not look at the pleasures. And as you quite rightly say, it's about being with people. We're not very good on our own. We're not meant to be on our own. So
no, we're tribal animals. We do better in social groups. We always have, and we always will. And isolating ourselves is one of the closest routes to depression. But yeah, it unlocks some things. Thanks, Dad.
Well, I feel a bit happier.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Anyone else want to give any thoughts?
George, I just wanted to say thank you for delivering that with passion, as I knew you said you were going to do, and it's come across massively. And I think it really relates for what we're doing with the New Leaf Academy. I think you left that one for me to discover there myself, that you know, you could actually say that happiness is about, as we know, what's deeply rooted in the New Leaf is understanding your purpose.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That is happiness, isn't it? You know, so it really, really connects with the 2190, what we're doing with the New Leaf Academy. Once you understand happiness, you understand your purpose, and then, you know, the pleasure, you might get quick wins. Like I think, you know, Steve mentioned at the beginning, you know, you'll lose that weight. It's a pleasure really quickly, but the happiness is really, you know, moving towards and finding your purpose and sticking to it. So
keeping
Yeah.
it off, as in, yeah, exactly.
that's it. So, if anyone in here listening is thinking that they want to find out a bit more, there is a free 7-day course on the New Leaf Academy where me, George, and Emma deliver a bit more. So register for that tonight. If there's one thing you do tonight, register on that course. We'll give you a bit more information about the happiness and the pleasures of the 2190 course. But George, thank you for sharing that. And I think we can send that link out to everyone as well at the end, can't we? That everyone that's on this meeting.
We can, yes.
This presentation. But thank you, mate. That was I felt the passion, which is what's
pleasure.
deeply rooted with the purpose.
Well done, George. I'd just like to say, look, I mean, fair play for doing this kind of thing and stepping up. I've come off the back of doing a number of presentations today in the corporate environment, and one of them was around connection. The post-COVID world, we are so disconnected with remote working, not even one day in the office a week, reliance on Teams. And actually, you've positioned some things, which is a really good way of bringing some of these components to life in a different way. So many crossovers and so many things that we're talking about, whether it's sports, business, or family life. So yeah, look, do you know what? Well done for stepping up and showing us some really, really good, meaningful concepts there. Really meaningful. So yeah, appreciate it. It's good. I've got some stuff to share with you now as well. Next time, yeah. Killing me in the gym.
Bless you, Dots. Thanks. Yeah, that's crossover. I should have used that word. Yeah, it is crossover, and this is where this is again where my passion comes from with food, and it also comes a little bit with our education in the school systems, as in I just think there'll be some people here tonight that had never heard the word dopamine and serotonin. And I remember when I first heard it about 5 years ago, I'd never heard about it. Why was I learning about dopamine and serotonin at 25? Why wasn't I learning about dopamine, when I was younger, and understanding that we all have these brain chemicals and these things that are driven on pleasure and happiness. And it, as you say, it has such crossover, and we can identify so many different things. Now, once as the doctor said, in order to fix a problem, you have to identify what the problem is, and this does a lot for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for me as well, the connection thing is so important. For years I was just unhappy, and it turned out that I just wasn't with my people. I didn't have the right connections. I was hanging around and associating myself with the completely wrong people, and it wasn't until I found the right connections, I was going out partying for pleasure, right? I was hanging around these people because I wanted to be included. And it wasn't until I found meaningful connections I actually found happiness. And I didn't necessarily have to associate myself with certain people. Trying to chase that pleasure here, I actually found happiness with my people, and it took a very long time for me to figure that part out. So yeah, that definitely resonated with me today. Well done.
Love that, Shona. Thank you very much. And you have got your people, and you always have it. As I always say, don't I, with Trin, I say it to you, Dutch, we can't buy it. Happiness you can't buy, and you can't buy, the community. You have to work on it, and you have to earn it. And then that's exactly what that comes from. Dude, you have a question?
Oh, I didn't realise my hand was up, but no, I think what related to me as a teacher is the food side of things. At a break time every day we have the same food: sausage rolls, chicken nuggets, all those kind of stuff, and made me think that the kids crave that and want a sausage roll every break. Or, I mean, we know they're not the healthiest, but actually schools could go a little bit away, couldn't they, just to change those snacks, change those sausage rolls to healthier things. And I think that would really affect maybe behaviour in schools. I don't know, maybe it won't, maybe I'm just talking rubbish, but
it would.
I mean, they crave like chicken nuggets, milkshake, and sausage roll. As a school, we could go away to change that, because we'll probably see a trend in behaviour changes as well.
You would, because you'll get spikes. You get your insulin levels, your insulin spikes, so they have the quick pleasure where they'll feel good, and they have the quick come down. Yeah. And if happiness is if pleasure is a graph, it's great, bad, great, bad, great, bad. Whereas happiness is more like pretty good, okay, pretty good, okay. And that's what we're looking for, because we all have we all have peaks and troughs, don't we? But it's about how steep we want them to be, and our food is a good level of the peaks and troughs, especially with high carbohydrates, as in specializing in type 1 carbohydrates and starches. That gives you that high influx of insulin and glucose and sugar, and then you get the come down. And that's this again crossover dots, as in there's so many things that crosses over. Good. Anybody else anything?
Yeah, George, thank you for for the presentation tonight. Again, I've been lucky enough to work with you, and I know how passionate you are in the rehabs. When you talk to clients and stuff, and it was what the scientist, the lady, was saying about. I think they call it a teeter-totter, or I think we call it a seesaw. Is that seesaw effect regarding the gremlins? I mean, I am an addict. So, there's certain things that I have to achieve on a daily basis, and trying to work out what we call, I think, in the addiction side of things, is a biological baseline, which is trying to find that happiness. It's not trying to keep, I've worn out so many pairs of jeans by skating up and down this teeter-totter, going backwards and forwards. With the serotonin, the dopamine, just trying to find, a happy medium, a biological baseline. And sometimes I think on a daily basis, having to change how I think, what I do. And I think a lot of it, again, is still down to, I think it was Shane that said, he's looking for his people. And it's like me, I have to surround myself with my kind of people. And I think you call it your tribe, is looking for my tribe. And those people are, people in recovery. And that's how I find that sometimes, I can get through the day, and sometimes that's picking up the phone, either going to an AA meeting or a CA meeting or an NA meeting, and that's how I can manage to get through the day some days, because, some days are better than others. Yeah.
Of course they are. It's one day at a time, isn't it, mate? It's one day at a time. It's always one day at a time. And again, that's why I relate so much. Even people that don't suffer with serious addiction, that we all have addictions, and we all have to make good decisions every day. Because then you win enough days, you win the weeks. You win enough weeks, you win the months. You win enough months, you win the years. And that's how it is. And that's the best and the only advice I can say about diet as well, and about losing weight, because it's lack of, oh no, I was about to swear there, I didn't. It's tough. It's a tough buyout. It is that 80-20. You've got to be on it 80% of the time to enjoy the 20%. And it's a shame it's that way, but that's just how it is. You've got to get on with it. You can't whinge about it. You can't go, oh, this isn't fair. It just is what it is, and you got to accept it, and you got to take it on the chin, and you got to live it.
Yeah, cool. But you've done well, George. Give me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Anybody else, guys? Anybody else? And I've kept you. Anybody?
Just well done, Georgia boy, mate. Very proud of you. And I think if Chelsea win, mate, everyone's happy, aren't they? So.
What, are Chelsea playing now?
Well, no, but just in general, if they win, everyone's happy, aren't they? So.
Well, don't think everybody agrees with that. Beyond.
Unbelievable.
Cool. But that's pleasure mixed with pain was in the presentation. Wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The same things that measure exactly.
Yeah, that sounds like Chelsea. Pleasure and pain.
Cool. Okay then, guys. If I'll stay on. I'll stay on for a second. If anybody wants to say anything more, but if not, thank you guys. Thank you all very, very much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate it very much.
Well done, Georgie.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, hi there, it's Steve here. So yes, I really get a buzz from endorphins after our session. So that's my high.
Good. Oh, bless you, Steve. Thank you very much.
George, did you say you were going to share it? I just want to get I want the slide with the 4 C's.
I'll send it to you, Dodds.
Yeah,
I think.
I think you got some quality stuff in there, George. And actually, I think the more you can tailor it to your own stuff,
Yeah.
be bold, because it's a lot. You're using, the theory and the presentation from other people, but you're putting together something which is quite personal, and you should be confident to do that as well. You always put little names in the bottom of corners of who you got the ideas from, but some really good stuff.
Yeah. It's as you say, Dolts. It's one of those things. It's now it's like, okay, I can. There's so many different little things I can apply it to.
Yeah.
And as you say, like there'll be thing. It will come. There'll be things that, as you say, that you can apply it into the corporate landscape and understand. Okay, like you're chasing pleasure. You're chasing pleasure right now. Like you know what I mean.
That whole connection thing, as I say, the big thing I've been talking about today is we've lost the culture of the workplace because we've become so disconnected, and we're struggling to re-engage that. So it's another example. Actually, I can use it as a theory behind why I'm saying it's good as human beings to connect and get back in. And yeah, it's in
the brain. It's in the brain. It has so much more power behind what you say when science is behind you.
Yeah.
It just does. Like, it's science. It's not only common sense, it's factual. And that's why I've with certain topics I feel such validation in what I say, because it's not me saying it.
Yeah, you've got stories to tell, and you're using other examples and other people's to tell those stories. And if we just stand up all the time and say what we think, no one listens. But if you build a story around it from other perspectives and things like that, then and also interesting stuff, that's what you want. You want something that's going to be interesting. So, look, mate. Anyway, it's really good. Some really important stuff you're covering there. So it's good.
Brilliant, Dales. Bless you. Thank you very much.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
We'll be there.
Right. See you soon.
I'll see you Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll do.
Bye.
Well done, George. It's good, mate.
Well, thanks, Al. Cheers, mate.
Actually managed to get on Teams, eh?
Well done. Proud of you.
Good, mate.
Well
it was methodical, and you reasoned it out well. It was good.
Thanks,
You give
mate.
yourself too much of a hard time with this stuff, mate. I thought you did really well.
Oh, mate, bless you. I appreciate it. It means a lot. That does. Thank you.
The more you do, you'll just feel smoother, but it came across really well.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'll catch you Wednesday.
Catch you Wednesday morning.
Good, man. Take care.
Bye. Dad? Dad? Dad?